Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Mastering Your Favorite Class, Episode 2, Assaulter. I'm Meowth, that's right, and if you missed Episode 1, Point Man, we'll leave a link in the description, and you can go ahead and click on that and watch that too. Okay, now, first things first. You want to go ahead and pick your favorite weapon, and the weapon that I'm using is the M4V1 with the standard ROKN UDT seal attachments. And the reason I'm using these attachments versus some random attachments that I decided to pick for my gun to make it better suit me is because lately I've been becoming a big believer in using the class the way it was meant to be used as opposed to trying to make it suit me. You really want to make sure that you avoid the pitfall of picking an attachment that really doesn't suit the class. If you pick something just because it works really good at one range, may make it extremely vulnerable at another range or incredibly unbalanced, and you might find the character unplayable or really just not very useful. Now the good news is that I really feel that the Assaulter class is the best all-round class. While the Assaulter class doesn't quite have the speed that the Point Man class does, it's still got a reasonable speed to get you where you want to go in a reasonable amount of time. The speed that it lacks, however, it picks up just a little bit of armor. Now this isn't going to make you an indestructible tank, but if you find yourself in a jam, you might be able to get your way out of it with the additional armor, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to want to still try to use cover as best as you can. So I say the Assaulter class is the best all-round class, and that would naturally imply that it's good at all ranges, and it really is, but where it's most effective is at mid-range. You could drop enemies all day long at mid-range and not even blink. Just pull the trigger and watch the enemies drop. There's no magic trick to it. In addition to your primary weapon's dominance at mid-range, it also has fantastic accuracy for your longer range targets. With a couple of quick, well-placed bursts, you'll roll right over any opponent. Even demo class you'll go right over like they're a minor speed bump. But it doesn't end there, because you still have a reasonable amount of stopping power and a fair amount of versatility, which means if you find yourself in an ambush, like a close quarters ambush, you can hip fire and you don't even have to worry about aiming down the sight to get the shot or the kill that you want, and it really cuts down on the amount of time, the response time that you have to get that kill, which can save you in a lot of ways. Now, regardless of how good I said these primary weapons are, and yes, they are definitely good, I would heavily advise against deciding to run into a crowded room full of guys and try to take down everything, even though that's what I typically try to do myself. That's just how I play, and that's why I normally prefer the Point Man class. That's what the Point Man is for. What I would recommend using this class for is maintaining an objective, holding that objective down. Once everybody's cleared out the area, that doesn't mean you have to wait for it, but once everybody's cleared out the area, you can safely stay inside that objective, and you should be able to take out most comers. The reason I would advise against trying to take down a whole room by yourself, just running in, is because the primary weapon takes approximately 4 seconds or so to reload, and that's just a little bit slow. Now, it's not slow in terms of, God, why does that gun take so long? It's just compared to, say, the shotgun, the 870, where you can, partially load your gun and then continue firing, it's quite a bit longer. And if you've ever sat there face to face with an enemy that's looking at you, they're going to try to shoot you. They're not just going to, say, okay, time out. Here's your time to reload, go. So if you do find yourself in a bind and out of ammo, the best thing to do is really to pull out your handgun, the 6 Hour P226. Now this gun's actually a reasonable gun for close range. It's got good accuracy, it's got good power, and you can usually take probably 2, if you're lucky, 3 enemies with the clip that you got. If you find yourself in the situation, though, where your team seems to be the most tentative team in the world and they just won't move in on the objective until they see somebody else's, then you're going to have to come up with something else to do. Which means possibly you want to consider breaking out that 40mm grenade launcher. I do find that it's great for breaching a room when there's a bunch of people in there and you want to clear out some space before you run in and use your normal guns. Personally, you don't find me using the grenade launcher a whole lot because I've had a lot of bad experience with it. It doesn't seem to have a very large blast radius, so I'll fire it into a room of guys, you know, where it's crowded, and typically it only gets the one guy that I fired at, or, you know, if I set it next to a couple of people, it just gets one guy, and that's really quite frustrating because I feel like rather than taking the time to switch to the grenade launcher, I could have just quickly shot them both with my primary weapon. But maybe that's just me. The 40mm grenade launcher can also be used to take out some longer range targets if they're sitting next to some kind of object that you could bounce it off of. Or if you're incredibly brilliant at aiming at long range, maybe that'll work for you too. The weapon that I really do like to use with the Assaulter class is the M67 grenade. I just love taking a nade, cooking it just right, and throwing it into a crowded room full of enemies, blowing them all up and making scrambled eggs. It's just awesome. The other thing these grenades are good for is taking out snipers' nest. For example, if you run by a two-story building where there's an open window up top and you see a barrel of a sniper rifle or two sticking out the window, just toss an nade up on it and try to bank it off a wall near them so it doesn't fly way beyond them, and, you know, just count your gold afterwards. Generally, it pays off pretty well. Now, as far as helpful support actions, you start off with your first offensive support action being a 60mm mortar. Now, I find that the best time to use this is when you know that there's a group full of enemies that are camping somewhere that you know are going to keep going back to that area, and you know they're going to be there when you're going to drop it. Otherwise, typically they're going to be gone. It doesn't have a gigantic blast radius, although it's reasonable, but you got to really know that they're going to be there or you're just going to waste it. What I usually find myself using is the smoke mortar, because you can set it up and block the enemy's field of vision, so when they decide they're going to come in on your camp where you're holding the objective, they're not going to know exactly where you're at, so you'll be able to pick them off because you'll have a little bit better idea, as long as you place it properly, where they're going to come from. I really do like offensive support action number 2, the guided missile. It's really great at spotting enemies, it's really good at killing enemies, but the one thing that you gotta watch for is that it doesn't have a very large blast radius, so you gotta make sure that you get your shot just a little bit closer if you want to hit your target. That does it for me this time. I'll see you guys all next time.